What's going on, Jeromes? So your Minnesota Vikings have been very active in free agency this offseason as adofo-mensah adds that Moneyball approach. And I love Van Ginkel. I love Grenard. I love Blake Cashman outside. How about that? All the signings have been fantastic. But you always want more, right? And the Vikings have a little bit of cap space to play with, as well as a 90-man rooster to fill out. So we got a couple more. We got a couple more value veteran free agents that the Vikings need to go after. Now, parameters. So supplementing at positions of need. Now, ideally, again, even though we are sometimes a hypocrite on this, ideally you draft BPA. Now, quarterback tax, it's a whole nother thing, but getting your roster full of good players from the draft, I mean, you can't really go wrong. Specifically searching for position of need keeps you drafting for position of need, right? But in free agency, you can supplement your shortcomings because you can select exactly what you need, the type of player that you want, as well as you can name your own price. Also, minimal deals, less than $3 million average per season, and ideally on some of these guys closer to league minimum. It is more of like a one-year prove-it deal, but keeping it below that threshold, that makes sure that it doesn't impact compensatory picks in 2025. Although the compensatory window does close a week after the draft, so some of these deals could get done after that, and that's why basically this month you're not going to see a whole lot of movement on these free agents. Well, number one, the big time names are really available. Number two, some teams are being. If teams are in contention for compensatory picks next year, they're very cognizant of that. Also, ideally, little to no guarantee. So if they come in, they have their free agent deal, but if they get beat out in camp, they can't make the rooster. The team isn't incentivized to keep them around, and the best player gets the roster spot. What a crazy notion. Lastly, if you can get 2 to 3 years out of them. So if a guy can come in and play a role and then signing him to a second contract and then being a part of that 90-man, being a part of the 53, being a part of the team, yes, I think that is extreme value. And also focus on what a player can do for your team and not what they can, because the best way to get upset is like, hey, this value free agent that we signed for a league minimum deal, he's not starting. He's a bum. Boo. No, it's the same thing with the draft. So it's the same thing with the draft, where if you take a player day 3 and you see them specifically as a backup / special teamer and they fill that role, that's a win. The same thing with some of these free agent signings. Just because you take a player in the 5th round and he doesn't become an all-pro, that doesn't mean that it's a loss. So let's dive on to these 5. So first up, yes, Hunter Renfro, the pride of Clemson, slot machine. He's 28 years young, 5'10", $185, was a 2019 5th rounder by the then Oakland Raiders. And also, remember, he's a Pro Bowler in 2021. Put up a 1,000-yard season. It's kind of crazy, man. But a career 269, 28, 84, and 17 over 5 seasons. And he's been perpetually on the trade block over the last 2 years. I mean, basically the extension that they signed him to, not so much. But now he's an open market free agent. Hasn't signed anywhere, probably going to link up to a team on a minimal deal, but he's still a shifty and capable slot receiver over the middle, add some plus side on the return as well. So I would take a shot. And even though I love me some Brandon Powell, I love me some Jalen Naylor if he can stay healthy, I love me some Tristan Jackson, I think a guy like Renfro, I think that could add a little bit of spice to the gumbo, although, I don't know. Next, number 2, a nose tackle, Tartt. Now, he's a guy that the Vikings fans have been championing the bit for a while, because Tartt absolutely tore Bradbury up at joint practices earlier in training camp last year. But he's only 27. He's 6'2", 304, was a 2020 UDFA out of Florida International. And he became the Titans' starting nose tackle for 3 years, lining up next to Jeffrey Simmons. But he was waived late into the year last season, picked up by Houston, and played a couple games. Now we can sign him because he's a former Houston Texans defensive player. Come on in. But he's disruptive up front, 26 pressures and 1.5 sacks in 2022. And the whole thing is, too, is like he wouldn't be promised anything, but he definitely would add at a position of need up front on the defensive line. And could he be a high-energy sub-package pass-rushing nose tackle? Yes, I think he certainly could and should. Or at minimum, Just have him practice every day against Bradbury and go from there. Next up, speaking of Bradbury, so we need to supplement. We need a just in case, with Bradbury, and not just to denigrate his level of play, but also Bradbury has missed time over the last 2 years with the same back injury. That is concerning. So enter Conor McGovern, and yes, it is confusing because there are two Conor McGoverns that play on the interior offensive line. It's kind of funny, but this is the younger one at 30 years young, 6'4", 306, the pride of Fargo, North Dakota, which is basically Vikings territory. I mean, come on. He was a 2016 fifth-round pick by the Broncos back in the day. Coming out of Mizzou. So he does have experience with offensive line coach Chris Cooper, as well as run game coordinator / running backs coach Curtis Modkins. So there you go. He was on the Jets the last 4 years, and he actually had a very solid 2-year run starting in 2021, 2022, where he graded out as a top 10 center in run and pass blocking. Ended up on injured reserve last year. The same thing with everyone on the Jets, but McGovern still out there floating, can play center, can play guard, has experience with the scheme, and it would make sense to bring him in as depth behind Garrett Bradbury, because as of right now, I mean, yeah, Dan Feeney does have some center experience, but definitely need a little bit more. Next, we can't help ourselves. We certainly cannot help ourselves. Yes, Diamond Duke Shelley is still out there. And, I mean, Duke is only 27, 5'9", a $183, formerly at Kansas State. The Vikings picked him up off of waivers in 2022 after the Bears let him go. And frankly, he had a very magical season in the Donna Shell defense. 86.4 PFF coverage grade on 470 total snaps. 0 goose egg. D'Angelo Russell touchdowns allowed, including a big-time pass breakup against the Bills in the end zone against Dawson Knox. 11 total passes broken up on the season. He also had an interception against the Bears, his former team. 59.6 quarterback rating when thrown at. And for whatever reason, I mean, it should be a sign when a player isn't brought back by the GM who brought him in the first place, especially after the player plays well. So it's like, and the fact that he signed a very minimal deal with the Raiders last offseason, was cut, and then ended up with the Rams for a hot second. I just like, for whatever reason, he wasn't brought back. Bring him back. Bring back that love and feeling. And with Flores, and Kevin O'Connell has alluded to that the defense with Flores wants to play a little bit more man this year. Duke Shelley is going to be in his bag. Come on, man. Like, league minimum deal, nothing guaranteed. Maybe a couple incentives. Let's go from there. All right. And lastly, this is the ultimate mama I can change him type player that Kwesi loves. So Mekhi Becton, formerly the number 11 overall pick in 2020, coming out of Louisville, huge, 6'7", 363 if he's announced, and he was the OG physical freak left tackle, and he's only 24. Like, he turns 25 at the end of the month, but high drafted medical guy. Kwesi just like the Spice Adams meme right now, but showed great promise as a rookie, had a really nice season at left tackle for the Jets, but then 2021 had a knee injury, cartilage, I believe, and then 2022 he fractured his kneecap and missed the entire season. Last year they brought him back as a right tackle, left tackle. It just did not work out last year, but yes, so you have a giant tackle project with bad knees, but mama, I could change him. That whole thing. And the whole thing with Becton, too, is like, if he pans out on 50 cents on the dollar of his sky-high potential, that's really interesting. The Vikings, they could use a young veteran swing tackle at this point. Quisenberry is a little bit longer in the tooth, but in terms of estate planning for O'Neal or hedging with Darrisaw, I think it would be smart to bring in a tackle project like a Mekhi Becton, where, hey, he's going to come in, minimal deal, prove it deal, no muss, no fuss. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So there you go. But that's it. That's 5 minimum Vikings free agents the Vikings need. Word salad. There you go. You guys know what to do. Skull production value.